I spent 5 years saving for my dream wedding, then found out my parents gave all my money to my brother for his last-minute ceremony. At the same venue, on the same date I had booked, I didn't scream or cry, I just smiled, walked out, and made a phone call. 2 hours later, my mom was calling me in a panic. The realization hit me while standing in Blissful Beginnings, the most exclusive bridal boutique in our city. I was there for my final fitting, excited to see my dress. A vintage-inspired Vera Wang that had taken me nearly a year to find and 3 years to save for. The kind saleswoman, Marissa, who'd been helping me for months, had this strange look on her face when I mentioned making my final payment. "Your account shows the balance was paid in full last week," she said, tapping at her iPad. "Your mother called to confirm everything was taken care of." I felt a flutter of confusion. My mother? The same woman who'd barely shown interest in my wedding plans except to suggest I was overthinking everything and should just pick something simple? The same woman who'd never once offered to contribute financially? There must be a mistake, I said, pulling out my phone to check my wedding savings account, the account I'd been carefully building for 5 years, sacrificing vacations, new clothes, and countless dinners out. The account that had finally reached the magic number I opened the app and stared at the balance. 47 or 53. My legs nearly gave out. 5 years of savings, over $35,000, gone. The transaction history showed a transfer to my parents' joint account 3 days ago. A transfer I definitely hadn't made. "I'm sorry," I mumbled to Marissa. "I need to make a call." I stepped outside, hands shaking as I dialed my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice unnaturally bright. "Honey, how's the fitting going?" "Mom," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Where's my money?" The pause was brief but telling. "What money, sweetie?" "The money from my wedding account, the account I've been saving in for 5 years. It's gone." Another pause. "Oh, that. Well, we needed to put down deposits quickly. And since you always save so responsibly..." "Deposits for what?" I already knew. Deep down, I knew. Daniel's wedding, of course. Isn't it wonderful? He and Caitlin decided they didn't want to wait. They're getting married in June at Rosewood Manor. June, Rosewood Manor, my date, my venue, the one I'd booked 18 months ago. "That's my venue," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. "That's my date." "Oh, don't be silly," my mother laughed, the sound grating against my ear. "It works out perfectly. Daniel loved all your ideas when we showed him your planning binder, and this way we can use the same vendors, the same everything. It's so much more efficient." My planning binder, the one I'd left at their house during my last visit. The one containing every detail of the wedding I'd spent years dreaming about and working toward. "You took my money," I said, the words falling like stones. "You stole from me." "We're not stealing." My mother's voice hardened. "We're borrowing. Daniel needs this now. You know how impulsive he is. He can't wait years like you can, and it's not like you and Mark have even set a date yet." Mark and I had set a date. We'd set it 2 years ago, I'd told them repeatedly. They'd simply never bothered to remember. "I'm coming over," I said, ending the call before she could respond. As I drove to my parents' house, the tears I expected never came. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. After 29 years of being the responsible one, the practical one, the one who could always wait. While Daniel got everything he wanted immediately, something inside me had finally, irrevocably broken, updated. Wow, I wasn't expecting this to blow up overnight. Thank you all for the supportive comments to answer the most common questions. Yes, my name is on the account and my parents had access because they helped me open it years ago. I'm heading to the bank first thing tomorrow. Do you think I should confront my brother directly or focus on my parents first? To understand how I ended up in this situation, you need to know that I've spent my entire life as an afterthought in my family. My brother Daniel arrived when I was 3. The long-awaited son, the golden child who could do no wrong. From the beginning, the patterns were clear. When I brought home straight A's, my parents would nod and say, "That's expected." When Daniel managed a C+, they'd celebrate with dinner at Cheesecake Factory. When I worked 3 jobs through college, to graduate debt-free, they called me unnecessarily stubborn. When Daniel dropped out after 2 semesters, they bought him a car to cheer him up. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother. But Daniel has spent his entire life being bailed out, propped up, and cheered on, while I was expected to handle everything myself. By the time I was 10, I knew if I wanted something, I had to earn it. By the time I was 20, I'd stopped expecting my parents to show up for my achievements. I met Mark 4 years ago at a charity auction. He was the photographer. I was coordinating the event for my PR firm. We bonded over our shared love of old jazz records and hiking, and within 6 months, we were inseparable. He proposed on a sunrise hike to Angel's Landing in Zion. Just us, the rising sun, and a simple vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. That night, I called my parents to share the news. "That's nice, honey," my mother said distractedly. Did you hear Daniel might be getting promoted at the coffee shop? Assistant manager. We're so proud. I started my wedding fund the next day. I knew exactly what I wanted. A June wedding at Rosewood Manor, a historic estate with gardens that bloomed with blue hydrangeas in early summer, a string quartet playing. During the ceremony, fairy lights in the ancient oak trees. Nothing extravagant by modern wedding standards, but perfect for us, and I knew, without asking, that my parents wouldn't contribute. You've always been so practical, my mother would say whenever weddings came up. We're saving for Daniel's future, you understand. So I saved. I took on extra clients. I made coffee at home instead of stopping at Starbucks. I tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet and watched the number grow slowly, steadily. Mark offered to help, but this was important to me. To create something beautiful with my own hard work. My Aunt Emma was the only one who seemed to get it. My mother's older sister, she'd always been the family rebel. Never married, traveled the world, built her own consulting business. They don't see you, she told me once. But I do, and someday, they'll realize what they've missed. I started visiting the bridal boutiques a year ago, finally allowing myself to try on dresses once my fund hit the $25,000 mark. I found my dress at Blissful Beginnings, the kind of place where they offer you champagne when you walk in, where they learn your name and remember your preferences. Marissa helped me find the perfect gown. A vintage-inspired design with delicate lace sleeves and a subtle shimmer when it caught the light. You look radiant, Marissa had said that day. My mother, who'd reluctantly agreed to come along, had merely shrugged and said, "It's a bit much, don't you think? Something simpler would be more your style." I didn't let it bother me. I was used to it by then. I put down the deposit on my dress, booked the venue for June 15th, and started working with vendors. Every detail was carefully chosen, meticulously planned, and personally financed. I left my planning binder at my parents' house 6 weeks ago, after a Sunday dinner where they'd barely asked about the wedding. I'd brought it hoping to generate some interest, some excitement. It sat untouched on their coffee table all evening. I forgot it when I left and decided it wasn't worth going back for right away. They'd never shown interest before. Why would they suddenly start paging through my wedding plans? Now, as I pulled into their driveway, I realized just how wrong I'd been. They hadn't been interested. They'd been taking notes, not for me, but for their golden child, my father. Opened the door before I could even knock. "There she is," he said, attempting a jovial tone that fell flat. Come in. Your mother said you were upset about something." Upset. As if I'd broken a nail or gotten stuck in traffic, I walked past him into the living room, where my mother sat perched on the edge of the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap. And there, sprawled in the armchair like he owned the place, was Daniel scrolling through his phone. "Hey, sis," he said without looking up. "Mom says you're freaking out." I took a deep breath. "Where's my money?" My father cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in arranging the throw pillows. "Now, honey, I know this seems upsetting, but it's all for the best. Daniel and Caitlin's wedding will be beautiful, and you can use all the same ideas for yours later on." "Later on?" I repeated. "I've been planning this wedding for 5 years. I've put down deposits, I've signed contracts, with my money you took without my permission." Daniel finally looked up from his phone, his expression, a mixture of annoyance and superiority that I'd seen 1,000 times before. "It's not like you needed it right away," he said. "Caitlin and I want to get married this summer. We don't want to wait around forever like you and Mark." "We're getting married on June 15th, I said. "I've been telling you all for 2 years. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Well, that's the date Daniel and Caitlin want too. It works out perfectly. Same venue, same date. We'll just use your plans for their wedding instead. You're always so good at organizing, sweetie. You can find another date." I stared at her, trying to comprehend the level of disregard in her words. "You want me to just give up my wedding date? The one I've had booked for a year and a half? And let Daniel use all my plans? Plans I've spent 5 years creating and saving for?" "Well, technically," my father interjected, "the venue wasn't fully paid for yet. We had to put down the rest of the deposit for Daniel. With my money," I almost shouted. "Money I earned, money I saved. You had no right." "We are your parents," my mother said, her voice taking on the icy tone I remembered from childhood scoldings. "That account was opened with our help. We've always had access." Yes, they'd helped me open the account, by which they meant my mother had come with me to the bank 5 years ago and put her name on the account just in case. I'd been meaning to remove her for years but had never gotten around to it, a mistake I was now paying for. Literally. "How could you do this?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my determination to stay composed. "How could you steal my wedding?" Daniel rolled his eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. It's just a wedding. You can have yours later." And that was when it hit me, like a bolt of lightning cutting through fog. They would never see me. They would never value my dreams, my work, my sacrifices to them. I would always be the responsible one who could wait, who could understand, who could give up what she wanted so Daniel could have his way. But not this time. "You're right," I said, my voice suddenly calm. "It is just a wedding." My mother looked relieved. "I'm glad you're being sensible." "I'm being more than sensible," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'm being practical. I'm doing what I should have done years ago." "What's that supposed to mean?" my father asked, looking uneasy for the first time. "It means you've made a critical error," I said, scrolling through my contacts. "You assumed the only thing I had going for me was my savings account." My mother frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You forgot what I do for a living," I said, finding the number I wanted and pressing call. "Claire? It's me. Remember that conversation we had about contingency plans? I'm going to need to activate Plan B. Yes, everything. And I need to talk to Eduardo about the Rosewood situation." "Who are you calling?" my mother demanded. "What contingency plan?" I ignored her, listening to Claire's reassurances on the other end. "Thanks, I'll be in the office in 20 minutes. And Claire, make sure Louisa knows what's happened. Tell her the Barton wedding at Rosewood is officially canceled." I ended the call and looked at my family, all three of them now staring at me with varying degrees of confusion. "What did you just do?" Daniel asked, a note of worry finally creeping into his voice. "I just called my assistant," I said, putting my phone back in my purse. "You all seem to forget that I'm the head event coordinator for Elite Affairs, one of the top 3 event planning companies in the state. The company that, coincidentally, has an exclusive arrangement with Rosewood Manor." My father's face paled. "Now, wait a minute." "No," I cut him off. "I'm done waiting. I'm done understanding. I'm done sacrificing what I want so Daniel can have it instead. You stole my money and my wedding plans. Fine, keep them. But you've made a massive miscalculation if you think that's all I have." I stood up, gathering my purse and keys. "I have to go now. I have a wedding to salvage." "What are you going to do?" My mother's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something that might have been fear. I paused at the doorway and turned back to look at them. My father nervously fidgeting with his watch, my mother perched on the edge of the couch. Daniel, finally setting down his phone, all of them suddenly realizing they might have overplayed their hand. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. "But since you're so interested in efficiency, Mom, you should know that Rosewood has a strict cancellation policy. If a wedding is canceled less than 60 days before the event, they keep the entire payment." "All of it." Daniel's face twisted with anger. "You wouldn't dare." "I wouldn't?" I smiled for the first time since discovering the theft. "You clearly don't know me at all." As I walked to my car, my phone began to ring. Daniel, followed immediately by my mother, then my father. I silenced them all. I had work to do. 2 hours. Later, I was sitting in my office at Elite Affairs, surrounded by my team. Claire, my assistant, had already reached out to all my vendors. Eduardo, our venue coordinator, was on speakerphone. "It's done," he said. "The Hamilton-Davidson wedding on June 15th has been officially canceled in our system. Since you're one of our preferred planners, they've agreed to waive the cancellation fee as a professional courtesy." He paused. "However, I checked and there's another booking at Rosewood for that date now, a Barton wedding. They put down the final payment 2 days ago, but they haven't submitted any of the required vendor documentation or liability insurance forms." "That's interesting," I said, exchanging glances with Claire. "And what happens if they don't provide those forms by the deadline?" "The contract clearly states all documentation must be received no less than 45 days before the event. If not, Rosewood has the right to cancel and retain the payment due to breach of contract." "And when is that deadline?" "Today, actually, end of business day," I smiled. "Thank you, Eduardo. I think we can work with that." Updated. "Thanks for all your support. I'm overwhelmed by your comments and advice. My brother has called 16 times now, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. My parents are threatening to disown me if I don't fix this immediately. I haven't responded to any of them. Aunt Emma just called to offer her vacation home for a wedding. Should I accept or stick with my backup venue plan?" My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. By the time I left the office, I had 27 missed calls from my family, 13 from my mother alone. The voicemails ranged from confused to panicked to outright threatening. "What did you do?" My mother's voice, tight, with barely controlled rage. "Daniel just got a call from Rosewood saying there's a problem with their booking. Fix this now." "This isn't funny anymore." My father, trying to sound stern but landing on desperate. "Your brother is getting married on June 15th. That's final." And finally, Daniel, "You better call me back right fucking now. Caitlin is crying. Mom is freaking out. Rosewood says our wedding is canceled because of some paperwork we didn't file. I know this is your doing." I didn't call any of them back. Instead, I drove to Mark's apartment, where I found him in the kitchen making dinner. "Hey, beautiful," he said, turning to kiss me. Then he saw my face. What happened? I told him everything, the stolen money, the stolen wedding, and what I'd done in response. His expression darkened as I spoke, his hands clenching and unclenching around the kitchen towel he was holding. I'll kill them, he said when I finished. They stole from you. That's not just wrong, it's illegal. I know, I said, and believe me, I'm furious, but I think what I did today is going to hurt them more than any legal action could. What exactly did you do? He asked, pulling me closer. I smiled against his shoulder. I canceled our Rosewood wedding, which effectively released our date. Then I made sure Daniel and Caitlin's booking would be canceled too, due to missing paperwork. Paperwork that, as an event coordinator, I know is absolutely critical, but most couples don't realize they need to file. So neither of us gets Rosewood now? Mark looked confused. Not quite, I said. Remember my client from last year? Sophia Chen, the CEO who was so grateful when I salvaged her corporate retreat after that hurricane? Mark nodded slowly, realization dawning on his face. She owns a property, a beautiful historic estate about an hour north of here, on the coast. It's not open to the public, but she offered it to me once as a thank you. I called in that favor today. So we're still getting married on June 15th? We are, I confirmed, just not where my family expects, and not with anyone from my side except Aunt Emma and a few close friends. He pulled back to look at me. Are you sure about this? Cutting them out completely? I thought about it, about all the years of being overlooked, undervalued, taken for granted. I'm sure they made their choice. They chose Daniel, like they always have. Now I'm choosing myself. My phone buzzed again, my mother calling for the 14th time. I silenced it and put it away. The next morning, I went to the bank and closed the old account, removing my mother's access to what little remained of my money. Then I opened a new account at a different bank, in my name only. It felt symbolic, like cutting a cord that had been slowly strangling me for years. When I returned to my apartment, my mother was waiting outside, pacing by the entrance. She rushed toward me when I parked. What have you done? She demanded. Rosewood called again this morning. They said our booking is canceled due to incomplete paperwork. They're keeping the money. All of it. How unfortunate, I said, stepping around her to reach my door. You need to fix this, she said, following me. Daniel and Caitlin need that venue. I turned to face her. The same way I needed the money I spent 5 years saving? The money you took without asking? That's different, she insisted. We're family, we share things. No, I said quietly. You take things. You've always taken from me and given to Daniel, but not this time. Her face hardened. So that's it? You're punishing your brother because you're jealous? That's very childish. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Well, your father and I won't stand for this, she said, her voice rising. If you don't fix this situation, don't expect to be welcome in our home anymore. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something startling. Her threats had no power over me anymore. That's your choice, I said, just like this was mine. She left in tears, slamming her car door and speeding away. I should have felt guilty, or at least conflicted, but all I felt was relief. Over the next few weeks, the drama escalated. Daniel's fiancée, Caitlin, reached out directly, pleading with me to be reasonable and help them secure another June venue. My father left stern voicemails about family duty. Extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my selfishness. Through it all, I focused on rebuilding my wedding. Sophia's estate was even more beautiful than I remembered. A classic stone mansion overlooking the ocean, with gardens that would be in full bloom by June. Her staff helped me rework my plans to fit the new space. And slowly, a new vision emerged, one that felt more authentically us than even the original plan had been. Mark's parents were supportive, offering to contribute financially to make up for some of what we'd lost. I was touched but declined. This is our wedding, I told them. We'll make it work with what we have. And we did. I called in favors from vendors I'd worked with for years. I revised our guest list, cutting it down to only the people who truly mattered. I found a simpler dress. Not the Vera Wang, but a lovely gown I discovered at a boutique that specialized in sample sales. 3 weeks before the wedding, Aunt Emma called me. Your mother came to see me, she said without preamble. She was crying about how you've torn the family apart. I sighed. What did you tell her? I told her she and your father tore it apart when they stole from you, Emma said firmly, and that if they want any hope of repairing the relationship, they need to start by returning every penny they took. I laughed bitterly. That money's long gone. Rosewood kept it all when they canceled Daniel's booking. I know, Emma said. Your mother admitted that part, apparently. They'd also taken out a loan to cover the rest of what Daniel and Caitlin wanted for their wedding. All the extras that weren't in your original budget, they're in a bit of financial trouble now. That's not my problem, I said, surprised. by how little sympathy I felt. "No, it's not," Emma agreed. "I just thought you should know, and I wanted to confirm. Do you still want me to walk you down the aisle, since your father won't be there?" I'd asked her weeks ago, in a moment of emotional clarity. "Yes," I said. "There's no one else I'd rather have by my side." The day before our wedding, I received a text from Daniel, the first direct communication since the blow-up. "Caitlin and I are getting married at the courthouse tomorrow. Just wanted you to know." I stared at the message, trying to decipher its intent. Was it an olive branch? A guilt trip? A simple statement of fact? After careful consideration, I replied, "I wish you both happiness." It was the truth. Even if it wasn't the whole truth, I did wish them happiness. I just no longer felt responsible for making that happiness possible at the expense of my own. Our wedding day dawned clear and perfect, with just enough breeze to carry the scent of ocean and flowers through the estate gardens. As I stood in the bridal suite, looking out over the rolling lawn to the sea beyond, Aunt Emma appeared in the doorway. "You look radiant," she said, her eyes glistening. "Truly beautiful." I smoothed the simple satin of my dress, not the one I'd originally chosen, but somehow better. More me. "I feel beautiful," I said. "And happy, really happy." Emma crossed the room to stand beside me. "I have something for you," she said, pulling a small velvet box from her purse. Inside was a delicate pearl bracelet, the beads luminous against the black velvet. "This was your grandmother's. She wore it at her wedding. I thought you might want something borrowed and something old." I blinked back tears as she fastened it around my wrist. "Thank you." "Your grandmother would have been proud of you," Emma said, adjusting the bracelet. "Not just for this beautiful wedding you've created, but for standing up for yourself. She always worried you'd spend your life trying to please your parents." "I think I did for a long time," I admitted. "But not anymore." The ceremony was everything I'd hoped for. Intimate, personal, filled with love. Mark's vows made me cry. Mine made him cry. We danced our first dance to the Ella Fitzgerald song that had been playing the night we met. No one made speeches about how I'd always been the responsible one, or how Mark was so patient with my practical nature. Instead, our friends toasted to our adventure, our partnership, our joy. It wasn't the wedding I'd spent 5 years planning. In many ways, it was better. As the night wound down, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet. My phone buzzed in the hidden pocket of my dress. A text from my mother. "I hope you're happy with what you've done." I looked back at the reception, at Mark laughing with his college friends, at Aunt Emma dancing with my former boss, at the circle of people who truly saw me and loved me anyway. I typed a response. "I am very happy." Then I put my phone away and rejoined my husband, my real family. 2 years later, Mark and I bought a house last spring. A little craftsman with a yard big enough for the puppy we adopted and the garden I've always wanted. I left Elite Affairs 6 months ago to start my own event planning business, specializing in intimate, personalized celebrations. It's been more successful than I could have imagined. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. After the wedding, they made several attempts to reconcile on their terms, meaning they wanted me to let go of the past and stop holding a grudge without any real acknowledgement of what they'd done. I maintained a polite distance. Then about a year ago, my father had a health scare. Nothing serious in the end, but enough to shake him. He called me from the hospital, his voice small. "I thought about what I'd regret," he said. "If this had been it?" And I realized I'd regret how we left things with you. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was a start. We've had dinner together twice since then. Stilted, careful meals where we talk about the weather and current events and never mention June 15th or Rosewood Manor or the money they took. My mother still sometimes slips into her old patterns, making comments about how Mark and I do everything the hard way. But now I just smile and change the subject. Daniel and Caitlin divorced after 10 months. No one was surprised, least of all me. He moved back in with our parents for a while, then suddenly announced he was moving to Seattle to find himself. He sends occasional texts, superficial, updates about his new job or the weather in the Pacific Northwest. I respond in kind. It's not close, but it's something. Aunt Emma comes to visit often. She was the first person we called when we found out I was pregnant. A little girl, due this fall. "She'll be fierce," Emma said, hugging me tight. "Like her mother." Last week, I received a small package in the mail. No return address, but postmarked from Seattle. Inside was a stuffed rabbit and a note in Daniel's handwriting. "For my niece, I'm sorry for everything." I put the rabbit on the shelf in the nursery we're preparing. I'm not ready to fully forgive, not yet, but I'm open to the possibility of a new relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than old patterns. Sometimes I think about that day at Blissful Beginnings, when I discovered my wedding fund was gone. It felt like the end of something then, of my dreams, of my trust, of my place in my family. Now I recognize it as a beginning, the moment I finally understood that I deserved better, the moment I chose myself, as Emma likes to say. Sometimes the best way to keep a family is knowing when to let it go. Updated. This post officially hits 10K upvotes. Wow. Thank you all for the incredible support through this journey. Baby girl arrived 2 weeks ago, and yes, Aunt Emma was in the delivery room, not my mom. Daniel sent another gift but still hasn't visited. My parents are trying in their way. Do you think true healing is possible, or are some family wounds too deep to ever fully repair?